Did you know for Stand By Me, after director Rob Reiner screened the movie for Stephen King, he noticed that King was visibly shaking and wasn't speaking. He left the room and upon his return, told Reiner that the movie was the best adaptation of his work he had ever seen. 2. Kiefer Sutherland claimed in an interview that in one of the locations of the film, a Renaissance fair was being held, and the cast and crew attended and bought some cookies. Unfortunately, the cookies turned out to be made with green, and 2 hours later, the crew found Jerry O'Connell crying somewhere in the park. 3. In the campfire scene in which Chris breaks down, Rob Reiner was sure River Phoenix could do better. He asked him to think of a time in his own life when an adult had let him down and use it in the scene, which Phoenix did. Upset and crying, he had to be comforted by the director afterwards. The result of Phoenix's exercise is the scene that ended up in the final cut. 4. Corey Feldman has stated in several interviews that of all the characters he's played, Teddy was actually the closest to his personality and personal life at the time. 5. Rob Reiner considers this the best film he has ever made. Did you know for Lion King, the line, "What do you want me to do, dress in drag and do the hula," was improvised by Nathan Lane. Co-director Rob Minkoff knew the line was perfect when he heard it, but he didn't think there was any way they could get it into the movie. They had to do a lot of selling to Disney executives to incorporate it, including performing the scene in person by banging on a water dispenser and playing the ukulele. They succeeded. 2. A homeless man on the street helped inspire a key change in Rafiki's character. Rafiki was originally Mufasa's wise counsel, but other than that, his character was quite dry personality-wise. When filming in London, co-director Roger Allers saw a homeless guy dancing in the street with a cup shaking it around. It sparked inspiration that Rafiki should be like that, crazy and energetic. 3. The animators were so impressed with Jeremy Irons' performance that they worked Irons' features into Scar's face. 4. Jim Cummings, who voiced Ed the Hyena in this film, had to fill in for Jeremy Irons' Scar for the finale of Be Prepared. Irons threw out his voice after performing the line, "You won't get a sniff without me." The rest of his recording didn't sound powerful enough. Did you know that for Goodfellas, according to Henry Hill, whose life was the basis for the book and film, Joe Pesci's portrayal of Tommy DeSimone was 99% accurate, with one notable exception. The real Tommy DeSimone was massively built. 2. Al Pacino was offered the role of Jimmy Conway. He turned it down due to fears of typecasting. The same year, Pacino ended up playing an even more stereotyped gangster, Big Boy Caprice, in Dick Tracy. He admits regretting the decision. 3. Martin Scorsese reportedly didn't want Ray Liotta to have contact with the real Henry Hill before filming because he had never directed Liotta before and didn't want Hill to influence Liotta. 4. The first scene filmed was the Maury's Wigs commercial. Martin Scorsese was inspired by a low-budget commercial that ran in New York City for a replacement window company. Scorsese contacted the company and found that the spokesperson in the ad was Stephen R. Paca, who owned the company and created the ad himself. Paca was hired to write, direct, and edit the commercial for Maury's Wigs, so it could look like an authentic local ad. Did you know that for Titanic, James Cameron went on 12 dives to the real Titanic himself and found it an overwhelming emotional experience to actually see the sunken ship? During his first trip, he was so goal-oriented that he managed to film the shots he wanted, but as soon as he was back on the surface, he broke down in tears after finally realizing the magnitude of the historic tragedy that he had just witnessed. He ended up spending more time with the ship than its living passengers did. 2. Many of the core extras used for the movie took on characteristics of actual survivors. One scene where 2 little girls are loaded onto a lifeboat, and the man says, "It's only for a little while," is based on testimony from one of the girls who survived. The man also says in the scene, "Hold Mummy's hand and be a good little girl." According to survivor Eva Hart, these were the last words her father said to her before the lifeboat she was in was lowered. 3. The post-sinking scenes were shot in a 350,000-gallon tank where the frozen corpses were created by applying a powder on the actors that then crystallized when exposed to water. Wax was applied to hair and clothes to create a wet look. Did you know for Inglourious Basterds, this is the first Quentin Tarantino film to win an Oscar for acting? Christoph Waltz for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. Waltz won another Oscar for Tarantino's Django Unchained, while his Inglourious Basterds co-star Brad Pitt would go on to win his first acting Oscar at the end of the decade for Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. 2. Quentin Tarantino worked on the script for almost a decade. 3. At the end of each take, actors would face the camera and say "Hello, Sally," referring to Sally Menke, the film's editor. This practice has occurred since Quentin Tarantino's previous movies, such as Kill Bill. Inglourious Basterds was the last film by Tarantino to be edited by Menke, whose work was honored in 2010 with her final Academy Award nomination for Best Editing, prior to her death later that year. 4. In a roundtable discussion with Brad Pitt and Quentin Tarantino, Tarantino said that Til Schweiger had previously refused to put on a German villain uniform for a film role, largely due to being born and raised in Germany and his very real hatred of anything German villain related. When Schweiger was told he'd get to unalive a German villain in every scene he wore the uniform, he happily agreed to play the part of Hugo Stiglitz. Did you know that for Avatar, the Na'vi language was created entirely from scratch by linguist Dr. Paul R. Frommer? James Cameron hired him to construct a language that would be easily enunciable for actors to pronounce, but would not resemble any human language. Frommer created about 1,000 words. Cameron requested Dr. Frommer that the Na'vi language must be entirely new, as it's supposed to be from another planet, and that it should sound nice to the audience. Cameron didn't want any additional editing done to their voices, and wanted them to sound authentic and not unnatural. Equipped with a vast knowledge of linguistics, Dr. Frommer understood what kinds of sounds the Na'vi language would or wouldn't have. Just like J and R don't exist in Korean, in English, the H sound is unaspirated. In a similar vein, Frommer's conception of the new language totally avoided the sounds of ch, the, and esh-e. Additionally, Frommer had to decide on the language's syntax, or rules regarding word order. He came up with his own set of constraints and words to be used in the language of Pandora. The tongue took inspiration from the natural languages of the world to create a totally different spoken form. Did you know that for Interstellar, composer Hans Zimmer was instructed by Sir Christopher Nolan to make a unique score? It's time to reinvent. The endless string ostinatos need to go by the wayside. The big drums are probably in the bin. Nolan did not provide Zimmer a script or any plot details for writing music for the film, and instead gave the composer one page of text that had more to do with Zimmer's story than the plot of the movie. 2. According to Dr. Kip Thorne, the largest degree of creative license in this movie are the clouds of the ice planet, which are structures that probably go beyond the material strength which ice would be able to support. 3. Steven Spielberg, who was attached to direct this movie in 2006, and hired Jonathan Nolan to write the screenplay, chose other projects instead. In 2012, after Spielberg's departure, Jonathan Nolan suggested the project to his brother Sir Christopher Nolan. 4. The giant dust clouds were created on location, using large fans to blow cellulose-based synthetic dust through the air. 5. Anne Hathaway suffered from hypothermia while filming in Iceland, due to the fact that her astronaut suit was open while filming scenes in the icy water. Did you know that for Avatar, most of the animal noises heard in the movie are recycled dinosaur noises from Jurassic Park, notably the T-Rex and the raptors? 2. At the time of auditioning, Sam Worthington was living in his car. 3. James Cameron was convinced that CGI effects had progressed enough to make this film when he saw Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. 4. James Cameron originally planned to have the film completed for release in 1999. At the time, the special effects he wanted increased the budget to $400 million. No studio would fund the film, and it was shelved for 8 years. 5. According to Sam Worthington, he was invited to the casting via a phone call. The person who called told him nothing about the script, nor did they even tell him the director's name, and Worthington was disappointed at first, thinking it was another waste of time. 6. Director James Cameron, known for being tough on set, sometimes would wear a hat with HMFIC, which meant Head Mother Effer in Charge, and allegedly kept a nail gun on set that he would use to nail cell phones that had the misfortune of ringing during the shoot to a wall above the exit sign.